Have you ever imagined that one ordinary lottery ticket can change your entire life? It seems like a chance for happiness, but does wealth always bring joy? Today's story is about Sara and Tom, who faced something that many people don't even realize. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment. What would you do if you won millions? Sara and Tom lived in a small town in Indiana. Their life was simple and seemingly ordinary. Tom worked at a local factory, and Sara was a housewife. They did not have much money, but they lived modestly, dreaming of better days. Sara loved her garden, which was her pride. The flowers she grew became a local legend, and neighbors often stopped by for advice. Tom, on the other hand, was a practical man and never believed in easy money. Lotteries. That's for dreamers, he would say when one of his friends bragged about winning a few dollars. One evening, Tom was returning home after his shift. He stopped at a gas station to buy gasoline and coffee, and at the cash register, his eyes fell on lottery tickets. Well, why not? He said to himself and bought one ticket. It was not like him at all, but that evening seemed special. There was some kind of magic in the air, as if something great was about to happen. When Tom came home and showed the ticket, Sara laughed. Really, Tom? A lottery? I thought you always said it was a waste of money. Tom smiled back. Well, maybe you're right. But what if this ticket is our chance? Sara shrugged her shoulders and put the ticket on the fridge, attaching it with a magnet. If we win, I'll buy myself a new gardening tool, she joked. The next few days were no different. Tom worked. Sara took care of the house and garden. They even forgot about the ticket until one evening when they turned on the TV. The screen showed the numbers of the winning draw. Sara brought the ticket out of the fridge as a joke. Let's check it out. Maybe we won $1, she said, smiling. Tom started reading the numbers and suddenly his face froze. Sara, I think we have a match. He continued to read and her heart was racing. No, it's a joke, she said, snatching the ticket from his hands. They checked it again, then again. It was impossible, but the numbers matched. They had won! We're millionaires. Tom shouted, throwing the ticket in the air. Sara laughed, but her laughter was nervous. She couldn't believe what had happened. Her mind was filled with questions. What now? What are we going to do with this money? How will it change our lives? Tom, on the other hand, was delighted. He started talking about a new house, traveling, and all the things they could do. Now we can live like kings, he said, hugging Sara. As the euphoria wore off, Sara felt anxious. She wasn't sure that this money would bring them happiness. Tom, what if it's not that simple? She asked. What do you mean? He was surprised. And I don't know. There's just something about it that doesn't sit right with me. Tom waved his hand. Don't worry, Sara. This is our chance. We deserve it. That night, Sara couldn't sleep for a long time. Her mind was full of thoughts about the future. She didn't know what exactly, but she felt that this win would change everything. Was this really their chance for a better life? Or was there something much worse ahead of them? Tom and Sara couldn't sleep all night. They checked the numbers on the lottery website, called the hotline, and even asked a neighbor to check the ticket. The answer was the same. They won $50 million. Sara, this is a miracle, Tom said, squeezing her hand. But instead of the joy she should have felt, Sara noticed anxiety growing in her chest. The next morning, Tom called the official lottery number to confirm the win. The voice on the other end of the line congratulated him and told him to come to the office in the state capital to claim the winnings. Sara, we did it! Tom exclaimed when he hung up. She smiled, but inside she knew their lives would never be the same. Tom immediately started making plans. We're going to buy a new house, a big one, with a pool and a garden for your flowers. And then we'll go on vacation. And maybe we'll buy a car, the one I've always wanted. Sara listened to him and thought about how she just wanted peace. Tom, maybe we should pay off our debts first, she suggested cautiously. Of course, that too, he replied, but it was clear that his mind was already far away. As the news of their win spread, the first alarm bells began to ring. Two neighbors came to their house to congratulate them, but Sara noticed envious glances. You're our local millionaires now, said Joe, a neighbor, smiling, but his voice sounded bitter. Relatives were not long in coming either. with whom Tom's sister, with whom they hadn't spoken in years, suddenly called. "Tom, I'm so happy for you. I just have a small problem with money. You wouldn't mind helping me out a bit, would you?" Tom promised to think about it, but Sara noticed that he was getting more and more tense with each call. A few days later, they traveled to the state capital to claim their winnings. The lottery office was luxurious marble floors, gold accents. Sara felt like a stranger there. When they were handed a check for $50 million, Tom was delighted. He even made a joking Sara. "Now we can buy an entire state?" But Sara just held his hand, trying to stay calm. After the winnings were formalized, they were invited to a press conference. Tom gladly answered journalists' questions, joked, and told them about his plans. "What are you going to do with the money?" one of the journalists asked. "We plan to live life to the fullest," Tom said without hesitation. Sara felt her heart sink. She knew that such statements could attract unwanted attention, and she was right. Within a few days, letters asking for help appeared in their mailbox, and strangers began to write to them on social media. Tom was excited about the new opportunities. He looked through catalogs of expensive cars, considered ads for luxury homes, and even started talking about a yacht. Sara tried to remain cautious. "Tom, we have to think about the future. What happens if we spend it all?" she asked. "Sara, this is our chance. We have to enjoy life." She realized that they looked at this win differently. One evening, when Tom came home from the car dealership, he put papers on the table. "I bought the car I've been dreaming of all my life," he said proudly. Sara looked at him but couldn't say a word. She felt that their lives were starting to spiral out of control. Would they be able to cope with the pressure of wealth? Or was this just the beginning of a tragedy? Sara woke up to the doorbell ringing. Her neighbor Joe stood on the doorstep with a hollow smile. "Hi, Sara. I was wondering if you had a couple hundred to lend me. My car broke down again." This was the third time in a week that one of the neighbors had asked them for money. Sara felt like every day the money that was supposed to make them happy was becoming a burden. And after winning, Tom and Sara's lives changed dramatically. People they barely knew suddenly began to seek their attention. Neighbors came with requests, relatives with debt stories. "Tom, you don't mind helping my business, do you?" "And it's just a small loan," his cousin said during dinner. Tom agreed without hesitation, but when Sara tried to object, he brushed her off. "It's just money. We can afford to be generous now." Sara began to notice a change in Tom. He became more confident, even arrogant. Every move he made was ostentatious expensive suits, a new car, even an expensive watch he bought without consulting her. "Tom, that's unnecessary," Sara said when she saw the bill for the watch, which was several $1,000s. "You don't understand, Sara. It's part of our new life," he replied with a smile she didn't like. Sara began to feel like a stranger in her own home. The neighbors no longer looked at them as equals. Instead, Sara noticed envious glances and heard gossip. They won the money, but it didn't make them better. One of the neighbors whispered in the store's parking lot. One day, someone left a note on the windshield of Tom's new car. "Money doesn't make you cool." Sara felt fear. She realized that wealth not only attracts attention, but also makes people angry. One night Tom came home with the idea of buying another car, this time for fun. It would be a classic convertible. "I've always dreamed of a car like that," he said, looking at Sara with a twinkle in his eye. "Tom, you've already bought one car. We haven't even decided what to do with the rest of the money yet," she protested. Why do you always oppose everything that makes me happy?" "It's our money. It's our money, Tom, not just yours," she replied, barely holding back her tears. This fight was not the first and certainly not the last. Sara tried to find support among her friends, but even they began to act strangely. Her best friend Anne began to avoid her after Sara refused to give her money for her vacation. "You've changed, Sara. Now you used to be kind, but now you only think about yourself," and said the last time they spoke. Sara realized that she and Tom were now alone. Meanwhile, Tom spent more and more time away from home. Illinois, he started meeting new people, rich, influential people. It's an opportunity to broaden our horizons, he explained to Sara when she asked why he didn't eat dinner at home. But Sara saw that these new friends were not just taking up his time. They were changing him. One day Sara found a bill in her mailbox for a dinner at an expensive restaurant that Tom had paid for a large group of people. Who are all these people, Tom? She asked, showing him the bill. You don't understand anything, Sara. It's an investment in our future, he replied. Sara felt a gulf between them. The money that was supposed to be their happiness had turned into poison. What would happen next? Would they be able to find their way back to each other? Several months have passed since Tom and Sara won the lottery. At first, it was like a fairy tale, but now their relationship seemed to be stretched like a string. Tom became more and more enthusiastic about his newfound wealth, while Sara tried to keep her head down. One evening, sitting at the kitchen table, Sara thought, is the Tom I loved still there, or has this money completely changed him? Tom began to live a life that Sara did not recognize. He no longer spent his evenings at home as he used to. Instead, he went to expensive restaurants, clubs, and golf clubs. His new friends, rich and powerful people, seemed to be the key to even greater success. It's all about us, Sara. I'm creating the future we dreamed of, he would say when she asked why he was away so often. But Sara felt that this future was driving them further and further apart. One day, Sara decided to visit Tom at a restaurant where he said he would be at a business meeting. When she entered the room, her heart sank. Tom was sitting at a table with a young woman. They were laughing and he was holding her hand. Sara could not believe her eyes. She did not go over to him. Instead, she returned home, trying to hold back her tears. What is happening to my husband? She thought as she looked at their wedding portrait on the wall. That evening, when Tom returned home, Sara was waiting for him in the kitchen. How did your business meeting go? She asked, barely containing her anger. Tom was silent for a second and then answered, everything was great. We discussed a new project. And you think holding a young woman's hand is part of that project? Tom sighed and turned away. Sara, you're overdramatizing this. It's just a friendship. A friendship. What about us, Tom? What happened to our friendship, to our marriage? Tom did not answer and went to his room, leaving Sara alone with her broken thoughts. The next day, Tom came home in a new convertible. Sara didn't even know he was going to buy another car. What is this? She asked, pointing to the car. This is my dream, Sara. I've always wanted a convertible and now I can afford it. Don't you think we should be fighting for our future, not just spending? Tom waved his hand in frustration. You always make everything so complicated. It's just money. We won, and I want to enjoy my life. Sara realized that Tom was idealizing wealth, putting it ahead of their relationship. Later that day, Sara decided to clean Tom's office. She accidentally found a receipt for an expensive necklace she had bought at a jewelry store. She took the receipt and started to think. Tom hadn't bought her any gifts lately. Who could he have given it to? Tom, what is this? She asked him that evening, showing him the receipt. Tom was confused for a second, but quickly gathered himself. It was just a gift for a client. It was nothing special. Sara couldn't believe it. She felt a huge crack appear between them. That night, Sara lay in bed thinking about how money had changed their lives. She couldn't decide what hurt more, Tom's infidelity or his blind passion for wealth. Could their marriage survive the pressure? And did Tom still have a piece of the man she once loved? The money, which was supposed to be a blessing, was turning Sara's life into a nightmare. Tom was becoming more and more distant, and their home, once cozy and safe, now seemed like a stranger. But on the night the irreparable happened, Sara realized that money not only destroys relationships, but can also be a real danger. It was an ordinary evening. Tom went to a club, and Sara was home alone. She made some tea and sat on the couch with a book, trying to distract herself from thoughts of Tom's infidelity and their endless quarrels. But the peace did not last long. Sara heard a noise coming from the yard, and at first she thought it was the wind. But when the noise repeated itself, her heart beat faster. She went to the window and saw a shadow slide by the garage. Who is it?" she called out, trying not to show fear. "The criminal is in the house." A few minutes later, Sara heard someone opening the door at the back of the house. Her heart was pounding with fear. As she grabbed her phone and tried to call the police, but her fingers were shaking so badly that she couldn't dial. A masked man entered the room. He was holding a flashlight and a knife. "Where's the money?" he asked rudely. "I don't know what you're talking about," Sara answered, trying to stay calm. "Don't play with me. I know you won the lottery," he shouted, coming closer. Sara realized that he was serious. When she tried to explain that the money wasn't in the house, but the criminal wouldn't listen. He overturned the table, broke a vase, and started rummaging through the drawers. When he approached her, Sara grabbed the nearest thing, a metal candlestick, and hit him. The perpetrator fell down, but quickly got up and grabbed her arm. Sara was screaming, trying to get away, when sirens suddenly sounded. The police arrived in time to arrest the attacker. As the police took the perpetrator away, one of the officers asking, "Do you have any idea who it might have been?" Sara shrugged her shoulders. She didn't know who the man was. But the next morning she received a call from a detective. "Ms. Sara, we found something interesting. The detained had a notebook with names and addresses, and among them was your name. What does it mean?" She asked, not understanding. "It seems he knew you through someone you knew." Sara remembered how Tom often bragged about their winnings to his new friends. Tom, it's because of you," she thought, feeling anger and fear overwhelm her. When Tom came home, Sara couldn't help herself. "Tom, did you tell your friends about our money?" "What? Of course I did. What's the problem?" He replied with indifference. "The problem is that I was attacked last night. Some of your friends must have thought they could easily take our money." Tom looked embarrassed, but instead of apologizing, he began to make excuses. "You're exaggerating. It could have been anyone." Sara felt a wall finally form between them. Later that evening, Sara sat in the empty living room, looking at the shards of the broken vase. She realized that money had not only divided her and Tom, but had also put her life in danger. Was this wealth worth losing everything that mattered to her? Sara woke up the morning after the attack, but her sense of security never returned. Her home no longer felt like a safe haven, and Tom no longer felt like a partner. The money that was supposed to be their happiness had become a curse. But Sara didn't know the worst was yet to come. Tom disappeared from the house more and more often. He made excuses about important business and meeting friends. But Sara knew that the money had changed him forever. "Tom, we don't talk anymore. We don't spend time together," she said one night when he came home late. I have a lot on my shoulders right now, Sara. I'm trying to do everything I can to make our lives better," he replied, not even looking her in the eye. Sara could feel their marriage crumbling, but there was nothing she could do. One morning, Sara received a letter from the bank, and she opened it, and her heart sank. The house they lived in had been sold. "What? This is a mistake," she said to herself as she dialed the bank's number. The operator explained that Tom had sold the house without her consent, and Sara couldn't believe it. She rushed to the phone and called him. "Tom, what does this mean? You sold our house," she screamed. "Yes, I did. It was a good deal. We can buy something better," he replied calmly. But you didn't even consult me. This is our home, Tom." Her voice trembled with anger and despair. "You always make everything so complicated, Sara. It's just a house," he replied and hung up. A few days later, Tom disappeared. He left only a short noting. "Sara, I'm going away for a while. I need to sort myself out. Don't worry about money. You'll be fine." Sara was left in an empty house that no longer belonged to her. She didn't know where to go. Her world, which was already unstable, was now completely shattered. Sara was forced to move into a small rented apartment. It was a small space with cheap furniture and a view of a noisy street. She sat on an old couch, looking at the boxes of things that were left over from her former life. How could everything be so ruined? She asked herself. And she remembered the times when she and Tom had been happy, when they had laughed together and made plans for the future. Now it all seemed like a distant dream. One day, Sara received a message from a mutual friend. Tom was in another country. He was seen in an expensive hotel with a young woman. These words hit her like a thunderbolt. She knew he was moving away, but she didn't think he could betray her like that. It means that I don't mean anything to him anymore, she said to herself, wiping away her tears. Sara spent several days in complete despair. She couldn't understand how everything they had fallen apart so quickly. But at some point, she decided that she would no longer allow herself to be a victim. I have to find a way to move on. Without him, without money, without the life I lost, she told herself. She started looking for a job and even contacted a lawyer to see if she could get some of her rights back to the money she had left. One evening, Sara received an unexpected letter. It was an official document from Tom's lawyer. What does he want? Is this another blow to her? Sara opened the envelope, but instead of an answer, she got more questions. What does it mean? She whispered, looking at the papers. Sara sat in her small apartment, holding a letter from Tom's lawyer. Her heart was racing, but she forced herself to calm down. The document said that Tom had transferred the rest of his assets to her, but on one condition: she had to sign a waiver of any claim to his future property. This is his way of getting rid of me for good, Sara thought. Sara put the letter aside and went deep into her memories. She remembered the day she and Tom bought their first house. It was an old but cozy house that they had restored together. We didn't have much then, but we were happy, she whispered, smiling through her tears. She remembered how Tom used to bring her flowers for no reason at all. How they used to bake pies together and laugh at failed culinary experiments. Where did it all go? She asked herself. Sara began to think about how winning the lottery had changed their lives. We thought the money would solve all our problems, but in fact, it only made what was hidden worse, she said out loud. She realized that the money gave Tom a sense of power he never had before, and that power had destroyed their marriage. And what about me? What did I do? Sara thought. She recognized that she was also to blame. She was afraid of change and tried to hold on to the past instead of supporting Tom or finding a way to move forward together. That same evening, Sara received a call from her old friend Anne, whom she hadn't spoken to for a long time because of a fight. Sara, I heard you moved. How are you holding up? Anne asked. At first, Sara wanted to answer briefly, but instead she began to tell everything that had been accumulating in her soul about Tom, about the betrayal, about how money had ruined their lives. You are not alone, Sara. If you need help, I'm always here for you, Anne said at the end of the conversation. These words gave Sara hope. She realized that even after everything she had been through, there were people in her life who were willing to support her. Sara decided it was time to find a new meaning in her life. She took her old notebook off the shelf and started writing. I will write about everything, how we won, how it all started, how it all fell apart, she told herself. Writing became therapy for her. She recalled the smallest details, from the joy of the first win to the pain of the loss. If my story can help someone, it will be my contribution to the world, she decided. One day, as Sara was writing the next chapter, the phone rang. It was Tom's lawyer. Sara, I know you haven't signed the documents, but there's one more thing you need to know, he said. Sara felt her heart clench again. What else? She asked. Tom left a letter for you. He asked me to give it to you if you don't sign the agreement. A letter. Sara didn't know what to think. What could he have written after everything that had happened? Sara received the letter a few days later. She held it in her hands, but was in no hurry to open it. Her thoughts were mixing. Did she want to know what it said? She put the letter on the table and said to herself, Tomorrow I will decide if it is worth reading. Sara sat at the kitchen table, holding the letter from Tom in her hands. Her heart was beating faster, and her thoughts were flitting between anger and curiosity. Why had he written this letter? Was it an attempt to apologize, or another maneuver to protect herself? She took a deep breath and slowly opened the envelope. The letter was in Tom's handwriting, neat but a little uneven. Sara, if you're reading this, it means you haven't signed the papers yet, and I am grateful for that. I know I hurt you. I know I ruined our life and lost your trust. Money became a trap for me that I couldn't get out of. It made me what I never wanted to beg, greedy, selfish, and indifferent to you. But despite everything, I want you to know that I am sorry. I'm sorry that I couldn't stop myself, that I put myself and money before our love. I left everything I could so that you could start over. I know it won't fix my mistakes, but maybe it will help you move on. If you ever find the strength to forgive me, know that I will always be grateful. Tom, Era. Sara read these lines over and over again. She didn't know how to react. Tom's words seemed sincere, but could they change what he had done? Sara put the letter down and started to think back. Their life before they won wasn't perfect, but it was real. Tom was a different man, kind, caring. He never sought luxury, he just wanted to secure their future. But money revealed his dark side. Was it his fault, or was it just a test we couldn't pass? She asked herself. Sara decided she didn't want to be a victim anymore. She used the assets Tom left behind to start a new chapter in her life. She found a small house in a quiet town. It was not a luxury villa, but for Sara it was a home where she could feel at ease. She also continued to write her story. Every night she would sit down at her desk and write down her thoughts, memories, and the lessons she learned from this painful experience. If my story helps at least one person realize that money doesn't solve all problems, it will be worth it, she told herself. One evening, as Sara was finishing the next chapter of her memoir, the phone rang. "Hey, Mems. Sara, it's Jack, your lawyer." "Yes, Jack. What's up? I have some unexpected news for you. Tom left another account in your name. He didn't mention it in the main paperwork, but it's a substantial amount." Sara didn't know what to say. What does this mean?" "It can change your life if you decide to use this money," Jack answered. Sara thought about Jack's words for a long time. She realized that she now had a choice: he keep the money and continue to build a new life, or use it for something meaningful. She decided to take her time. Life had taught her that the best decisions come with time. That evening, she wrote in her diary, "Wealth does not make us happy. Happiness is having a choice and the ability to live in harmony with yourself." Sara closed her notebook, wrapped herself in a blanket, and looked out the window. A future was waiting for her, and this time she was ready to face it without fear. The viewer is left with the question, what will Sara decide? Will she use Tom's money? Will she be able to forgive him? And will she find true happiness?